The first one is Ken Mars from Facebook. As a filmmaker and artist, what attracts you most to the documentary genre, and what are some of your favourites? Oh, that's a nice question. I think my favourites are, I saw a couple of films actually at the London Film Festival. One was called Last Days Here, which I really loved, about Pentagram. It was this band where one of the fans went to look for him, and I thought that was a fantastic film. And then there was a Herzog film called Into the Abyss. Those are the last two films that have really, I thought they were both fantastic films. In the past, early Nick Brimfield films, I loved Soldier Girls, and I love Eileen Warner's Life and Death of a Serial Killer. Of course, I love old Michael Moore. And yeah, those are the sort of films I like. But the films I really adore at the moment, the films I'm watching at the moment, I'm watching the last series of Breaking Bad, which I'm addicted to, and I've watched Girls, the whole season of Girls. I love her and Lena, and I've also, I watch quite a lot of telly actually. I watch them in box sets, and Borgen I think is my all-time favourite. You know, when we'd get the box set, I remember thinking, oh, I'm only going to watch one, and then I watched the whole lot over a weekend. I absolutely adored Borgen. Then there's Matt Rudge via Twitter. What is the difference in content and narrative between a feature length and a 60-minute film? I always used to think that a feature length film, well, a 90-minute, 100-minute film was going to be much harder than a 60-minute film. But now that I'm doing the longer ones, I realise it's much harder to do the shorter ones because you have to somehow condense everything into a smaller space. And in a way, you can be quite indulgent with the longer ones. So that's why I would never not work with an editor. There was once in a film I made, I worked with Ollie Huddleston, who's like a really good mate, and we do all the films together. Just an example of this, I remember with Rough Aunties, we were walking in the bush looking for this abandoned baby with Studler, who was one of the main characters. And I remember it was an incredibly hot day, and I had the camera, and I still use quite a big camera, and it was hot, and it was a long walk, and we kept stopping people and asking people if they'd seen this abandoned baby, and I thought the whole walk was fantastic. So I had imagined in my mind that the scene of getting there would be 3-4 minutes long. You know, there'd be the scene of us trying to find this baby and going in all these villages and walking across the bush. I think, to be fair, it was partly because it was such agony to get it. You know, it was such hard work. And then when I came to the edit, I remember Ollie just took one shot, which was us arriving on the road and starting on the little path into nowhere, it looks. And then he cut straight to the house where we found the woman who'd abandoned her baby. And I remember saying to him a bit timorously, oh, Ollie, you know, what about having a little bit more? And he said, Kim, nobody's interested in the long walk. They want to get to the action. And if you watch something like Breaking Bad or you watch Borgen, you know, the films that we all watch, you don't have huge, you have one or two maybe moody shots of, you know, Copenhagen or, you know, the bridge or something, but you don't have those. And I notice that sometimes when I'm watching films, because I haven't invested anything in those long sequences, I'm thinking, oh, I wish you'd get on with it a bit. So I love films where everything feels there for a reason and it feels good. At the same time, I love slow films. You know, I watched a fabulous film called Barbara about East Germany recently, which I completely loved. I seem to quite like German fiction, and that was quite slow, but everything was slow for a reason. So it's not, I don't want everything chopped up and fast. Trouble with answering questions is I sometimes find that I'll say one thing and actually it's more complicated than that. It's more, things are quite contradictory in life, don't you think? So I don't like things slow, but I like things long if they're there for a reason. So that's a bit of a long answer to your question. JJ via email, how important is it for your subject to know that you're recording them? Well, because I've got a big camera, there's no way they wouldn't know. And I remember when we did Divorce Iranian Style, I love Kiarostami. I love his early ones actually more, like Where Is My Friend's House? And Abbas Kiarostami, the Iranian filmmaker. And I remember another Iranian filmmaker said to him, oh, they could never have got that stuff in the court. They must have had a hidden camera. And I felt, you can tell I'm still harbouring, this is like 10 years ago. I'm thinking, oh, and Zeba said to me, you know, don't, you know, just take it as a kind of weird compliment. But of course I always have they can see the camera. And actually I don't like the expression, in fact I hate the expression fly on the wall, which people still use. It seems such an old-fashioned expression, because for me that makes you feel like the filmmaker is like a kind of non-feeling, non-present person that's just observing in a cold way. There's no other way to interpret that. And I think a lot of early observational films, people took that very much to heart. And so if people spoke to them, they would get embarrassed. They wouldn't meet people's eyes, and there was all of that kind of weird thing. But I actually really like it if people acknowledge me. So there's scenes you'll see in all the films, like in Divorce at one point, this woman comes in and she sort of makes us film her. And then she whispers into the camera. She's come in ostensibly for a divorce, but she admits halfway through this scene, she whispers into the camera, she says, I love him really, I don't want a divorce. I just want him to respect me. I buy him nuts and sweets when he's watching TV, but he treats me really badly. And then she goes back to this whole charade of wanting a divorce. And I love that, because then it's like a play within a play, and the audience is let in, because they're speaking to me, but they're speaking to you. There's also a poem that a little girl reads in The Day I Will Never Forget, that she wrote specially, she says, for people to read. She wrote it in English. She's a Somali girl, and it's her third language. And she reads the poem, and at the end of the poem, she says, I'm asking all of you, and this is all done like I'm doing to you, straight into the camera. She speaks to her mother about why did she need to have FGM. It's about being gender mutilated. And then at the end, she says, I'm asking all of you, is this what I really deserve? And I think that's the most brilliant use of the camera, because she's talking to me, but she's talking to the audience. And I know that sometimes when I show the film, you get a visible little sort of intake of breath in the audience, because she's appealing directly to this audience. That's an 8-year-old girl. So in a way, sometimes I think we're a little bit, we can be, I'm not saying you are, but people can be a little bit patronizing and assume that somehow people don't know they're being filmed or don't know what it entails or all that sort of thing. Because she knew exactly what she was doing, and her purpose for reading the poem gets revealed later in the scene. It's an amazing thing she did, and she set the whole scene up. She told me where to stand. She said, are you ready? She kept checking that I was filming when she was doing the rest of the scene. So, of course, yes, people, I would never... Having said that, you see, it's happening again. Having said that, I'm often filming a scene. People are completely aware that I'm filming. And then if what's happening, for example, if you and I are having an argument and Susanna's filming us, then we're not going to be aware of Susanna. If I'm just sitting here quietly and thinking about things, I'm going, like now, I'm very aware that Susanna's filming me. But if somebody came in and started shouting at me, I would completely forget this. It would be that I would be thinking about. So you can see in scenes people going in and out of being aware of the camera. A scene that springs to mind for me that you can see that in is in Sisters-in-Law, where we go in, they're aware that we're there, and then they say really horrible things to this woman who's trying to get a divorce. They say, what if we send you back to your husband? He'll split you open. They taunt her, they disrespect her, they're really horrible to her, and they're trying to bully her into not wanting a divorce. Then, at the very end, when the whole thing's gone, she's got a divorce, they notice we're there again and they go, oh, we want you to be happy, this is what Cameroon wants. They do a little sort of package to try and make it seem as if they've been on her side all along. And sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes audiences think that that means that they must have been aware that we were filming all the way through. But if they watch the scene, you know, it's really good if people watch films like they watch fiction. If you watch it for the layers and all the shifts and all the different meanings in it, you can see that at one point they're locked into this angry battle, and it's really become a sort of tradition versus change battle, where this woman is so brave, this completely uneducated woman is standing up for a divorce, and these 4 men are bullying her, and they're all in, you know, in their clerical, they all look like these very important men, and she's, you know, and they're saying, why do you want a divorce? What has he done to you? She has to repeat very sexual things. So it takes an incredible bravery from her to do that. So, Jordan Cullen via email. Although you do not generally use narration in your documentaries, do you have a favourite piece of narration in a film or documentary? The film I've just finished, so I feel a bit sheepish about this, the film I've finished is called Salma, and it's got loads of narration in it. But it's the woman in the film talking, and we use her voiceovers, and I loved doing it, but I don't think I'll do it again. I had to do it because her story happened in the past, so the whole thing was traumatizing for me. I was really deeply scared. I don't think I slept for the first month that we were there. You know, I just kind of kept waking up and thinking, you're mad, you can't do this, because actually observational filming can be so much easier, because all you have to do is be very alert, be on the ball, be receptive, be gentle, and then work out what you're filming and be very careful to get a story and work out you've got a beginning, middle and end. When there's somebody, she wasn't working anymore, her story had all happened, you know, 5 years ago, finished 5 years ago, she's now out of work, in the house, nothing to film. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to build up her backstory, you know, and that was what I wanted to tell, was this backstory. And the reason I wanted to tell it was I felt she was one of the few people to escape seclusion that was there and had a positive ending, and that, you know, there's millions of girls all over the world being kept in the house when they reach puberty and never allowed out again. You know, like one of my close friends' mother said she was told by her husband as soon as she got married, and she thought the beginning of her marriage was going to be a new life, a better life. And he said, you go out of the house twice as a woman, once when you get married and the next time is in your coffin, and that's what actually happened. So she loved the fact we were making a film about her family, and we couldn't stop her talking. She wanted to be in it desperately. But you know, the reason how we used the narration, which was really interesting, was Ollie, the editor. It's much more a kind of film like Salma is much more an editing. I think he's so brilliant. I was so lucky. I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't have had Ollie. I kept saying to him, are you sure you want to do this film? It's going to be really hard to make. And the little breakthrough, I'll just describe it to you because it was quite strange and I remember it really clearly. We were saying we want the scenes in the film to be like a fiction film, so you have layers of meaning in it. So we knew she'd had this very, like quite a brutal childhood really. She was given away by her mum to an aunt who was only 7 years old because her father didn't want another girl. And so there is kind of a bit of anger against her father, but not really. She loves her parents. And people admire her, but they're a bit frightened of her because she's escaped the village and she's become this famous person. And here's this woman from England, you know, 3 people from outside this tiny village filming her. So the scene, how it goes and how Ollie did it with the sound is Salma's with her mum in the kitchen and they're cooking. And if you just looked at that scene, you can't do it observationally, because if you just looked at that scene, you'd think, oh, Mum and Salma get on quite well. You know, they've both got over the past. And there's Dad in the other room and it's all very calm. But you see, I think that's what families are like. That's what my family would have looked like if you'd gone and just shot it. You wouldn't have known all the resentments and my dad's anger and everything. You wouldn't have seen it, you know. And then Salma's voice comes over it saying, you know, all I can remember of my childhood after she went back was my father being angry and shouting and my mum being scared. And it was just, and my father being a frightening presence in the house. Then we cut to the father and he's sitting on the sofa with his cup of tea and he just looks into the camera for a long time. He's just looking at me, but like I'm looking at you in the camera. And then he says, she's a good girl, but she's very angry. She's, you know, she's good. She's too clever, he says. And then he says, she's always angry about something. But you know what that means. That wouldn't have made sense if you hadn't known. And I said, Ollie, it was like a little key to unlock how to make the rest of the film. You know, so that's what he did. He used things that Sam had said to us. We didn't do interviews with her, formal interviews. We would just sit with her and she would talk when she felt like it. So the first couple of weeks when we went to her flat, we wouldn't really talk very much. And maybe I talked to her a bit about me through the translator, and then, you know, but then these things, she really wanted to make the film. She really wanted to talk about her past, because she sees herself as a voice for all these other girls that never get out. And there's a shot in the film that I remember filming it and feeling really kind of emotional when we were filming it. And if you didn't have all this voiceover and all this background, it's just two girls standing on a roof, watching the sun go down, pointing at it and dancing. They're two little girls, pre-puberty girls. You know, they're not adolescent yet. And they're looking at the sun going down, and it's a beautiful sunset, and everything looks very beautiful and calm. But by that point in the film, you know, as the audience, that that's probably one of the last sunsets they may see. They'll definitely be kept in the house after that, and then they may get married, and very unlikely they'll be able to stand on the roof and look at the sunset. A lot of the houses we went to, they had high walls, so you couldn't actually see over the wall, and you know, their lives would be different. So to that, hopefully, and I think audiences are amazing, and they often see things that I haven't seen because they're bringing their own lives into it. But hopefully they'll watch that and get the same feeling that we did because of the narration. So that's a long answer to your question, but I think narration, I learnt an awful lot about narration through this last film. I wouldn't call it narration in the way it's not telling you what to think, it's giving you layers, so that everybody gives you their own layer in a way, and it's all through Salma's words.